Cecil, it's always great to catch up with you. Hope you're doing well today. And have you made it to the beach at all?
Made it to the yacht harbor, not the actual sand beach, but walked around among the yachts, just a little window shopping.
Okay, yeah. Now have you picked one
I don't know
out?
if we could get one into Lake Tuscaloosa or not.
I look at some of these, and then I look at the price tag, and
it's unbelievable.
I quickly go back to maybe just a little John boat out home.
Yeah, try and get a tire to float. That would be big. Get a spare tire and bob around in Lake Nickel.
Yeah, which is one of your favorite spots.
It is. Thank you.
I see you. I know that Cecil's enjoying the day when I see the tweets from Lake Nickel.
That's usually with the dog, my rescue dog. She swims as much as possible, so it's one of the hidden gems of Tuscaloosa.
Absolutely, and for those who are not locals, we won't tell you about that spot. Just look it up. But Cecil, maybe biggest takeaway from Media Day inside the stadium a couple of hours ago. Maybe your biggest takeaway.
Well, as you know, you can't get to everybody, and it's hectic and so forth. So I spent a lot of time with Jalen, who hadn't really done a large group media session since before the season. Now he did some obviously some interviews after the championship game, and then I think ESPN came to Tuscaloosa and had a sit down with him. But as far as talking about his future, which he was reluctant to do, there really hadn't been an opportunity to do that until today. And he was good. It's still a little bit of a situation where he doesn't want to talk about whether he's staying at Alabama or going, or what he's going to do past the Oklahoma game, which is understandable. But he had a lot of insights into the season, and you could tell he really loves Alabama. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it might not be a better move for his playing career to go somewhere else, but you could tell he really loves the University of Alabama.
I've said multiple times that I don't really know what to expect, and I said I'm not going to give Jalen Hurts a chance to prove me wrong. He's proved me wrong several times, and you never want to bet against the guy. But let me just say, if I said that he's going to stay at Alabama, would you be shocked? I
wouldn't be shocked.
Okay.
No. He's his own man and makes his own decisions, and so if he's come to and talk to Dan Enos about him, and Dan thinks that they can do more things with him, make him even more prolific in the passing game and more of a professional prospect, whether it's even in the role that he had this year. So I wouldn't be shocked, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he wanted to be the start. Somebody guaranteed him that he could be a starter on a contending team next year. That would certainly be attractive to him too. So and again, I think through it all, I think we all should extend Jalen the courtesy of making his own decision instead of assuming that he's going to do this or do that.
And there's certainly the time that in the place, and right now he's talking about, I'm not really worried about that. He's talking about his team and a way that he can support them, and getting ready for this football game. I mean, because yes, we hear the 80 or 85%, but I think most of us, you want to see that first lick, and if how does Tua respond now? He's got the black jersey on. He takes that off. He takes that first contact. How does he respond? Yeah, we don't know that question.
We don't know. What I think we do know now is he was not 100% against Georgia, and you could tell that from even before the first quarter ankle injury. He just didn't look the same player that he did in Missouri game, Arkansas game, that point in the year. So who knows what 80 or 85% means? I think you'll see them both on Saturday, and hopefully Tua's close to 100% and can perform the way that people who have followed him all year know that he can perform. So even if he does, though, I think you'll see Jalen used in some circumstances.
So I picked your brain a couple of hours ago, and I asked you about the style of play. I'm going to ask you that here. Just maybe the style of game that you think this will be going into the Orange Bowl. Vegas has it about 76 on the over/under. I never want to, look at that, but sometimes
I've seen it as high as 80.
Yeah, but it's dropping, which is telling me that people are betting
80 is
under.
a lot of points. Yeah 80. You're just tempting on that to probably people who think it's going to go under feel like Alabama will hold Oklahoma to certainly not shut them out, but 24 24-28, like they did Georgia, and won't score. Alabama won't score 60 or 56. So I can see that. I think Oklahoma will be aggressive on defense. They'll gamble. They'll try and cause some turnovers, even if it means they get burned a couple of times. I think, talking to Ruffin McNeil, their defensive coordinator, yesterday, I think that it's almost the analogy he used was like a tennis match. They got to break serve sometime. They've got to get the ball somehow to their offense without Alabama scoring points. They can't just sit there and match points. Now that's going to be hard to do. Their defense, people, the boulder starts rolling downhill and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. They don't give up 60 points a game. They've had 5 games where they've given up 40 points. One of those was to Kansas, which catches your eye. They did not look good. Had the opportunity to watch their entire West Virginia game. They did not look good defensively in that game. But against Texas in the Big 12 championship game, they were okay. They weren't great. They weren't Alabama 1992. But they were okay. They made some plays. Their front four is, I would say, good. Their middle three, their linebackers are decent, and their secondary is a weakness.
Well, and maybe that's the point of the conversation when we begin to look at Alabama's offense. And see, I'm with you because we had Brad Edwards, which I love. He's an Alabama guy, and he said he thought the game. He thinks Alabama. He said I don't think that they'll be able to keep Alabama under 50 points. And so I'm one of those that maybe I'm a little bit conservative. But I think the game will be played in the 30s and the 40s. I just don't know if it's going to stretch out there. I mean, and maybe the question would be, does Nick Saban really want to get in that type of shootout with Kyler Murray?
I would think it's likelier, Ryan, and this is just me, I would think 42-24 would be likelier than 52-34 or 52-46 type game. But we'll see. People start turning the ball over and funny things happen.
Yeah, sure.
So. I watched one last night that was 10-7 in overtime, so that's not dead in college football. But that was because, bless them, neither team had a quarterback at all, Cal or TCU. So,
Cecil, I know you don't like doing comparisons, but I'm going to ask you: this offense, is this one of the best that you've covered?
Well, it's the best in this style. It's very difficult to compare them to the wishbone teams, whose objective was different. It involved ball control, time control, as well as being able to be explosive and gain yardage like Alabama was in 1973 or 1977. But as far as and I don't go back quite far enough to remember Don Hudson and Dixie Howell on the 34 team, which was one of the great teams. But as far as since 1983, when they've basically been more or less an I formation team, variation of a pro-style offense, this is the most explosive offense. Homer Smith had a great offense in 1989. It was different. It was innovative. They've had great offensive players, whether you want to talk about the Heisman Trophy winners, Mark and Derek or Sean Alexander. But to have the range of weapons that they have and the quarterbacks, I guess plural, but certainly in Tua's case, a quarterback that can distribute the ball to all those weapons, this is the best that I've seen. Because I think we talk to a lot of people outside of Tuscaloosa, and I think they're glued into this, but I don't think as much as the people that cover Alabama daily. I've said a couple of times, I think this is one of Nick Saban's best coaching jobs. Losing all the coaches, replacing all those defensive guys, going with a new quarterback, obviously. Handling the quarterback transition.
Oh, wow, brilliant.
I would agree with that, and it was good to see the Walter Camp Foundation recognize that. And you're not going to win every Coach of the Year honor every year. I understand that, but I think this year, as you say, with the staff turnover, with the quarterback transition, and with just sort of, I wouldn't say radically altering your DNA, but adjusting it a little bit to be a different type team than what you've done, even though you've been successful with what you were doing. It's easy if you're 2-9 and everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. then you want to change. You're going to change. You're going to do something different. But when you've won the national championship, and yet you're still confident enough to make some changes in what you do. I think that's a real measure of coaching.
Cecil, when you go outside of the area and do interviews and you're asked to describe what's happening in Tuscaloosa, what do you say?
Well, it depends. I think other towns in the SEC understand to some extent. I think it's hard for people to realize exactly what the expectations are year in and year out. I think that people don't get that it's still a small community. It's not like being in Dallas or St. Louis or San Jose or any of those places where there are other things that go on, and so they don't understand what a fishbowl the players have to live in sometimes, and they don't understand the degree of attention that Alabama fans, it's not just Saturday. A lot of places, they're great fans and wonderful fans on Saturday. They tailgate and they have fun. But it's 7 days a week in Tuscaloosa, as you well know.
I remember opening day of baseball. I took a phone call, and I was talking about the Braves, and a guy calls up, and he goes, I think at that point it's 190 days. He goes, your finger's not on the pulse. We got to get away from baseball.
That's enough baseball. It's opening day. That's enough.
Yeah, that was about all we talked. But it is kind of fun to reflect. As it crossed your mind that, Nick Saban's 2 games away from going past Coach Bryant?
Sure. Yeah, all those things do. Different times, different circumstances. Coach Bryant had to win a poll. Coach Bryant could easily have won a 7th or an 8th, or could easily have been 3 or 4, depending on how the vote. They got a break in '64 when the AP poll was before the bowls, and then in '65 when it was after. So they ended up winning them both, even though they lost to Texas down here in the Orange Bowl. So it's a little bit different, but it's remarkable. They're both runs, both sets of achievements have been really remarkable. But yeah, I think that's a goal that Coach Saban doesn't talk about very much, but I think it's one he's very aware of.
I was reminding the audience a couple of minutes ago, and this will be my final couple of thoughts here. One night that we were doing our evening show, and it was all about retirement. Nick Saban retired. And I called Cecil, and I said, Cecil, you got to come on and maybe calm the audience down. And I could paraphrase. I'm not sure if I can quote you, but here you go. You said, one of these days, those guys are going to be right.
Sure they are.
And I think
they hadn't been right yet.
Well, okay.
For 11 years.
And I think that was about 5 years ago.
Right.
And you said that one night, and I was thinking about that how many rumors have we chased with Nick Saban getting retirement age and thinking about retirement? What a run. I
don't think it would be this year. If they win it again next year, he has Tua coming back. He has a lot of offensive weapons coming back. They are going to have to do some rebuild on defense next year, but I think that's the sort of challenge that he appreciates rather than runs from. He was talking today about how, because of the setting here in Miami, and some of the Miami reporters were asking him what he had learned in his stint with the NFL, and he said what he learned was that maybe he was a better college coach than he was a pro coach. That doesn't sound like a guy who's looking at the NFL, and I can't imagine a college job that he would want to take. Now, retirement, that depends on your family, depends on your health, depends on a lot of things. But I think he's still very driven to coach college football.
Well, and there was something that he said here recently, because every time you've always asked him, anybody, he's always sidestepped the question. A couple of weeks ago, and you may have saw the piece, Maria Taylor played the basketball, and I believe they were doing a one-on-one deal.
Yeah.
I thought he had a really unique comment there that he was talking about whether it's business or – I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into that, but knowing the typical answer that we hear when that type of questions come up, he had a different response, and maybe that's what I took note is, he even used a part of it as business. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but – he talked about applying the leadership and different things, and That was the first time I'd ever heard that one. So I guess maybe that was just the newness grabbed me, I guess, from that comment.
Well, I think when you're a high achiever, you're always motivated to see if it would work in another field, another competitive field, and certainly business is competitive. But it's hard to imagine a Nick Saban away from football, because I think football is I think that the motivational skills that he has are uniquely suited to football. He certainly is very well aware of that the current events around him, the atmosphere of the country, and so forth. But football is still more or less a hit and be hit sport, and I think that he identifies with that.
Well, didn't his father coach into his 80s, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah, Lou Saban. So, and got back in it, I believe.
Well, now Lou is a cousin.
His
dad's.
Yeah.
His dad coached Pee Wee ball in West Virginia.
Nick Senior. I'm sorry. Right.
But Lou coached into his 80s. But Lou's a second cousin, I think.
Okay, so the Saban tree there. We don't talk a lot about the family side of things. Cecil Hurt, what are you working on for TideSports.com? Is it already posted, or will it be posted?
They're probably in the process of doing my conversation with Jalen and Jalen's appearance at media days, and several other notes. We talked to Terrell Lewis, and he. I guess good news, bad news. I guess the bad would be that he's not going to play Saturday, that some people had hoped that he could. But the good news is he says he wants to come back in 2019 to Alabama rather than try and go to the draft. He thinks he can, because of the injuries, he needs to have a good, healthy year and improve his stock. And that really, if you could have a healthy Terrell Lewis next year, that helps that rebuilding on defense considerably. So we had a chance to talk to him, talk to some of the assistant coaches. Talked to Lester Cotton, who will be in the starting lineup again with Deontay Brown out. So it's a busy day. It's a hectic day.
Very, very, very busy. TideSports.com, Ben Jones and all the crew there, Tuscaloosa News, TideSports.com. Cecil, as always, thank you again for being a part of the conversation.